Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 93% rate. Trevor Zegras.
And they score on the lacrosse move!
Jake Gensel.
Gensel banks it towards the goal. He scores!
Cale Makar.
Cale Makar, he scores!
Stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you're a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey.
My goodness gracious me!
Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow at College Hockey.
Welcome back to College Hockey Today, which does in fact still exist. I am Jayson Hajdu with College Hockey Inc. I am joined as always by Brad Schlossman of the Grand Forks Herald. Schloss, we've got a huge packed show. This episode, I'll also be joined at the end of the show by Sean Hogan, our Executive Director at College Hockey Inc., to talk about the new Age-Based Eligibility Model. But this has been some kind of offseason. I feel like it was like an NFL-style offseason where it was just one news cycle after another.
Yeah, I think we have to re-examine whether we go this long without recording an episode, because
I think
so much news has happened since the last time we've recorded, with player movement, coaching changes. We've got the draft coming up, which is why we're recording right now. We had always kind of planned to do a draft preview, but man, just a whole bunch of college hockey news as of late, and that's fine by me. I have stuff to write about, so it's been an exciting time for college hockey as a whole, I think.
The freshest news came down this morning, not publicly confirmed by the player himself, but you and others are reporting that Landon DuPont, the young defenseman, has made his decision as far as a college commitment. Yes,
he has made his calls, and he is going to end up playing at the University of Michigan next year. And he is he's one of those players who is going to be playing college hockey in his draft year. He is not eligible for the draft this year. He is going to be taken in the 2027 draft. He looks like he's going to be a top 5 pick. I know a lot of people are projecting number 1 overall. I'm not ready to say that quite yet. There are some other very good players that are going to be at the top, like Privalov, the big Russian forward. Alexis Joseph, there's the Dima Zhilkin, there's a lot of really good players, and we'll see how it shakes out. All of that, whether he goes 1, whether he goes 5, I don't think it really matters, in the fact that he's just a tremendous hockey player either way. Generates a lot of offense. This is a Michigan team that's gearing up to go for it here. They made the Frozen Four last year. They return a bunch of their players, getting Michael Hage back, who's just an absolutely massive development for that team. And, this is a team that's loaded and ready to make a run at it. So we'll see how that goes. This adds to another piece there on the blue line, where Michigan did lose a couple blue liners. I feel like the roles that Tyler Duke and Luca Fantilli played last year really got overlooked. Mm-hmm. Maybe sometimes we overlook the guys who aren't of the first round draft status, but those guys were top 3 in minutes played. The guy who led him in minutes, Ben Robertson, is back. So that is a big development for Michigan to get him. And also, I should throw out there, since we've recorded, I believe there's 4 really good defensemen in the Western Hockey League, and another one, Daxon Rudolph, made his decision too, and he's going to go to the University of Denver. And he's a guy who's going to get picked. We'll talk about him coming up here, but there have been some big commitments here in the last little while.
We will get into those names when we get into our draft preview. DuPont, correct me if I'm wrong, more or less puts a period on the biggest marquee names that we were waiting on this summer, correct?
Yeah, the one I'm curious if Matthias von Hanen's going to end up going to school. He is DuPont's teammate there. I feel he's a guy who does not get the buzz of how tremendous of a college hockey player he's going to end up being. So we're kind of waiting to see. He won't get the buzz that Landon DuPont gets. He's going to be an amazing college hockey player wherever he ends up, if he ends up going.
Okay, let's touch on some other headlines that have occurred since our last pod, which I think was in mid-April. But some coaching hires that had not been filled when we last spoke. Most recently, Harvard hired Rob Rassi as its head coach, replacing Ted Donato, who stepped down. Rassi most recently was the associate head coach at Michigan. What did you make of that hire?
Well, they have familiarity there. Rob Rassi has been there before. So there were a lot of really good candidates at Harvard. That was going to be a really difficult decision to make. Rob Rassi ends up winning out on that one, but that obviously was a very coveted job when you saw some of the names of guys that were in the mix there.
Two other hires further back in the offseason. Yale hired Jeff Hamilton, a Yale alum and a three-time All-American as a player. Alaska Anchorage hired Eric Root as its head coach. Two very different resumes for these two hires.
Yeah, Jeff Hamilton comes aboard at Yale after an extended search there for a new head coach. Even basically going back to last season, where
right,
Keith Elaine stepped down before the year. They kind of went interim route, and that was a really, really lengthy process, even in the off season. And then Alaska Anchorage goes to Eric Root, who's really been around quite a bit, from CC to St. Cloud and Miami, and now he's up at Alaska Anchorage, and we'll see what he can do there. Obviously, the Alaska schools, real challenging spots, but Eric Root has a lot of experience.
Should note, too, that replacing Eric Root at St. Cloud as the assistant coach is Joe Howe, who spent last year as the interim head coach at Yale before giving way to the Jeff Hamilton hire. So,
musical chairs.
Yeah. One other coaching note, Luke Strand gets an extension at Minnesota State, coming off back-to-back McNaughton Cups, back-to-back playoff titles, and back-to-back national tournament appearances.
Yeah, he's done I'm guessing the folks in Mankato could not be more excited about what he's able to continue from the Mike Hastings era. When Mike Hastings and Todd Connaught leave after what the miracles they worked in Mankato, I think there had to be a lot of concern the way that Luke Strand has stepped in and really built similar teams. I feel like the DNA hasn't changed at Minnesota State. Probably even going back to Troy Judding's era. They've had a type, and the type has not changed. They have some guys that will outwork you. The other thing I think Luke Strand deserves a lot of credit for, especially in this era, in the transfer era, is he's found some overlooked guys and turned them. He's really good at finding guys that have some talent that's been evident in their history. Maybe they found some hard times, and he pulls it back out of them. Him and Pat Ferschweiler have just been unbelievable at that. We saw that with Minnesota State's leading scorer this year. And a couple of the guys they picked up in the transfer portal in the offseason, I think are going to be of the same pattern. I see this. Sam Court is a guy who's put up a lot of points in the USHL, where Luke Strand is very familiar with. He won the Clark Cup there, goes to Arizona State, doesn't really produce. Let's see what Sam Court does at Minnesota State. But anyways, Luke Strand, well-deserved.
You couldn't have blamed Mavs fans for being panicked when they learned Mike Hastings was leaving the program. I don't think it could have gone any more seamless from Mike to Luke.
Absolutely. I mean, in so many ways, obviously the success is one thing, but it's just like they're playing the same brand of hockey. I feel like fans really enjoyed how Minnesota State played under Mike Hastings and Todd Connaught, and it's the same thing under Luke Strand. And honestly, it was the same thing with Strand's Sioux City teams. He knows how to win. Speaking of winning and guys knowing how to win, let's talk a little Stanley Cup. A lot of college guys were front and center. Obviously, Rob Brindamore behind the bench, Jacob Slavin, Keandre Miller, they did their thing. But you also had
the series turning, I think, when Brandon Bussey entered the picture, and then a bit of a coming out party for a player you used to cover in North Dakota, Jackson Blake.
Yeah, really all guys with very different developmental paths, right?
Yeah.
Even we can throw out Sean Walker. How about the playoff he had? Just
Bowling Green.
quietly reliable. I think
Mark Jankowski, another one, a little under the radar.
Yeah, he's got a national championship, and
Eric Robinson.
Yep. So Brandon Bussey, obviously the really big story here, where he comes in cold. I remember, I think it was the year of when the pandemic was going on and the NCHC had the pod in Omaha, and Brandon Bussey was on that team. And I talked to Andy Murray quite a bit before that season, and he just kept saying, this Brandon Bussey, he looks unbelievable. He has been so good in practice. They go out to the pod, and I think it might be the very first game he goes down with a season-ending injury. And that just completely derailed Western Michigan's year that year. But Andy Murray was right, as it turns out. He was really good. He signed a free agent NHL deal out of Western Michigan. Shocker. A Western Michigan guy signing a free agent NHL deal. What do they have, 9 of those guys the last few years? But he did, and man, every time he was called upon, he just won games. It's kind of like the start of this year. He just won game after game after game. Every time they threw him in there, he was winning a game. And obviously, to come in the middle of the Stanley Cup final, you have to be really prepared mentally as much as physically to do what he did. And what an incredible story that really is there.
It goes to show how few goaltending spots there are in the NHL and how hard those are to earn. Because I'm looking at his year-by-year minor league save percentages right now. 920, 922, 924, 913, 907. And not only wasn't there an NHL spot for him, the Bruins organization determined they didn't even have a spot for him in their organization. And here we are at age 27, and he finally gets his chance and makes great on it.
Yeah, and you know what? You never know with goalies. They're so, and I mean, look at the national champions. Johnny Hicks.
Right.
He was back up half the year, goes and wins the national title. Brandon Bussey, they plop him in the middle of the Stanley Cup final, goes and wins the Stanley Cup final. It's just a great story. Jacob Slavin, maybe finally getting the some of the love he deserves for how good he is. He, winning a gold medal in the Olympics, and he's just one of those guys that doesn't put up all the points, so nobody talks about him that much during the regular season.
You need to watch him over the course of a series, I think, to understand what he brings.
For sure. And I think, another thing that was kind of cool to see, especially probably for you and I, was, they were asking Slavin about how he understood why his stick is so good. And he said he actually learned it from his sister, because there wasn't a lot of checking in women's hockey. And you and I actually worked with his sister here at the University of North Dakota, and people probably don't know how fantastic of a hockey player Jordan Slavin was. Yep. She had some injury issues, and if not for that, she would, she even with him, she goes down as one of the greatest UND defenders ever to play here. So,
outstanding human being, also.
Absolutely, yeah, great family, and Jacob just he never probably got the credit he deserved at CC. He was really good on those teams. There's so many good stories out of this team. You mentioned Jackson Blake. I said, how many UND fans? I said, let's be honest, would have said his second year, this is what he'd be doing. It's easy to say now, like when you look back and you're like, oh yeah, we should have known he was going to be really good because he was so skilled. But I think when he signed, there were a lot of questions like, is he going to be in the American League for a year?
Yeah, was that a year too soon? Absolutely. Yeah. There was a lot of that. Yep.
Yep. But man, when you're that competitive and that smart, I think that's something that, lends to excelling at the next level. And not only did he excel in the NHL, the second question is the playoffs are different. Things get way harder. How is a guy that's that small and light excel when it gets hard? And he led them in scoring. So he did extremely well. And then, you mentioned Keandre Miller. I think he led them, and him and Slavin led the team in minutes on the back end. But boy, is his game taken off since college. He just is, he's still getting better. I feel like every year he keeps getting a little bit better and a little bit better. And it reminds me of something as we go into draft coverage here in a second. When I talked to Matt Smaby, North Dakota's associate head coach, he said, like, the defense position is so hard to learn. He's like, I was still, you're in your mid-20s and you're still trying to learn nuances of that position. Like, it's so tough. And I think we're seeing that with a guy like Keandre Miller. Like, he just keeps getting better. And I think when we look at this draft with all the college hockey guys, there are guys where, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we rush to make judgments on guys so young. Rasmus Dahlin comes to mind, like people wondering if that was a bust draft pick, and now all of a sudden he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL. It just sometimes D takes a little longer. So Keandre Miller, Sean Walker, Jacob Slavin, all great examples of guys that continued their development.
And rings from Mike Riley and Shane Gostisbehere too, while we're talking about college guys. Talking about Keandre Miller makes me think of some of those Wisconsin teams in his 2 years. They didn't have great win-loss success, but Cole Caulfield, Dylan Holloway, Alex Turcotte, Ty Emberson, good NHL players. Just didn't come together at Wisconsin. That was a young group as well. So, but anyway, let's go from the current NHLers to the potential future NHLers out of college hockey. We'll talk a little draft. That's this weekend in Buffalo. First round Friday night, 2nd through 7th rounds Saturday. Keep an eye on the socials for College Hockey Inc.'s on-site coverage all weekend long. And I think I know it's setting up to be a historic draft for college hockey. Some of that is just the continued growth of the sport, and some of that is the new landscape and the larger player pool that the NCAA has access to. Just shy of 150 current or committed college players appeared in the final Central Scouting rankings that were put out earlier this spring, topped by Gavin McKenna, the number 1 North American skater who may or may not go to Toronto.
So a couple of years ago, the draft was in Las Vegas at the Sphere, and I'm kind of running around like waiting to get interviews in there. And as the college players go off the board, I'm seeing you sitting up there in that room, and you're trying to pull these graphics together, put all these logos, and it's another college guy and another college guy, and you just look like you are drowning. And I can only think of what this year is going to be like. Just pray for Hodge. Like, this is going to be, you are going to be buried in college hockey players getting picked this year like you have never been before.
It's some Flight of the Bumblebee stuff. And it's a good problem to have. I also get a nice dry run during the PWHL draft where that's 90% college players, and it's just flying off the board, and you're trying to update 5 different social platforms. But yes, to your point, this is going to be a good problem to have. Yeah,
if you're a college hockey fan, I think the drafts are more and more exciting. For me in the past, I follow the college bound players. So I watched the USHL, I watched the NTDP, then the U18s, and but I didn't watch the CHL much. I'd never had a reason to. Those guys were never coming to college. So, why am I my time in that? Now I've been watching a lot of that. I've never had such familiarity with all these prospects, and man, is it going to be entertaining to see all of these players come into college hockey? Because, I was looking at it, and there is a chance that every North American who goes in the first round ends up in college hockey, whether it be this year or the following year. It's it's going to be not only a loaded first round, but the rest of the draft as well. You mentioned Gavin McKenna. I do think he goes number one. I don't think every team in the NHL has him number one on their board, though. Actually, I know they don't. I know there is a lot of variation in thought among these top guys this year. It's not like a no-brainer. But, you know, the one thing is when I talked about Jackson Blake and why did he translate so well to the NHL, and one of the reasons is he's so smart and he knows where the next play is. He can read off other guys, and that is one reason I think Gavin McKenna excels at the next level, because he is that next level smart, and he sees it and he can read off other guys and play really well with them. So I do think he ends up being number one.
If you're the Leafs, it's awfully tempting to look at him and be awfully tempting to how do you pass up the chance to put a player like that on Austin Matthews' line right out of the chute? Two styles of play that would seem to complement each other well. It's a really fascinating top 10, I think, because there's a lot of pieces, like you said, that could move around the board. We don't really know how they'll fall. Defensemen especially, there's going to be a run on college, active or incoming college defensemen. And you noted recently too, the successful teams in the Stanley Cup and how the core of their blue lines tend to be college defensemen.
Yeah, they do. And they kind of have a type. It's kind of the bigger, strong. It's not always guys that put up 80 points. You know, like Jacob Slavin doesn't. Keandre Miller didn't. I'm thinking of, you know, Colton Parayko from Alaska Fairbanks. There's kind of this type of guys that have been really successful. And I do think that the two guys who will be at North Dakota next year do fall into that style. You know, Carson Karls and Keaton Verhoff. Verhoff was at North Dakota this year. Karls is coming next year. And, you know, I think those guys are going to go high, but so are, you know, Chase Reed is going to Michigan State next year. By the way, a guy that couldn't make a USHL roster 2 years ago is going to go in the top 10. Daxon Rudolph, he committed to the University of Denver. It had a great playoff with Prince Albert. There wasn't a lot of buzz about that commitment, I felt. But I'm like, do people know how good Daxon Rudolph is? Like, he's pretty special. And he's going to jump in and make plays instantly for Denver. And then you've got a couple of non college D that will also be in the mix there, like an Albert Schmitz. So those guys are there. You've got the BU's top two centers could both go in the top 10. You've got Caleb Malhotra and Tynan Lawrence. BU is looking really good up the middle this year. That's obviously going to be a huge strength. I thought, you know, Tynan Lawrence is all over a little bit in the draft boards. The one thing that was interesting to me, I watched his first games at BU. He came in semester time. It took him a while to get going. Like,
that's hard.
But if you watch the last 4 games, he looked really good. The points didn't always show it, but he looked quite good in those games. Like, that was like, oh, like the light bulb is turning on right now for him. And if it might depend on what games teams watch, because if you watch those last 4 games, he looked pretty good. So we'll see where he ends up. You know, the other interesting thing that jumps out to me is I don't know if we've had this many guys who played NCAA in their draft year go. Yeah. Like, you've got McKenna, Verhoff, Tynan Lawrence, and then the 2 other guys we haven't mentioned yet, Ilya Morozov at Miami, and Hemming at BC, who, by the way, Hemming looked really good coming in mid-season last year for BC. He's got to be a super intriguing winger. Morozov, he had flashes. He looked really good at times. He went through the NCHC grind at times, but he is unbelievably young. I think his first game, he was like a month removed from being 16. So you have to take that into account. But those guys are really interesting prospects that have NHL builds, power forwards there. And then, a couple other guys that, Adam Valentini played there in his draft year. Landon Nyes did. Lincoln Keene. Do you ever remember anything close to that for guys?
14 in total that were active in college hockey last year, which is a really high number. From my chair as communications director of College Hockey Inc., my favorite number is 41 different schools have a player in the Central Scouting rankings. 41 out of 63. That's bananas. That's a credit to the sport, the coaches, the players that are playing it, and the folks that are helping them develop. 41 schools. And a wide range of school profile, which is great to see. I'm going to throw a couple other numbers out. I mentioned earlier that part of this is a function of the wider player pool now available to NCAA coaches. But this increase in players being drafted either out of college or committed to college predates that. If you go back, so the last 10 drafts, there have been 80 first-round draft picks that were NCAA affiliated. The 10 drafts prior to that, there were 53 NCAA affiliated first-rounders. So 53 to 80 from one 10-year window to the next. And then last year specifically, there were 76 college players or committed at the time college players, 76 total drafted. And that's the most since the NHL went to the 7-round format 21 years ago. So this is a trend we've been seeing for years. It's not just a byproduct of more players available to be recruited.
Yeah, and I think the number one recruiters for NCAA hockey are the former players. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing, it's a lot of people have taken note to how guys have jumped into the NHL and had success. When, the one that really jumps off the page that I think that everyone really kind of was like, whoa, was Cale Makar. Yep. Like, he was playing college hockey and then instantly jumped into the NHL playoffs and was like one of the best players. And I think that was a moment where everyone said, wow, like, this guy played college this year and he's ready to jump in like this. And you're going to continue seeing examples of that. And the most recent one is Porter Martone. I think you saw some of the comments by the Flyers and who said, I mean, look at this, look what he did this year. Like, he became a strong guy who's ready to play in the NHL, and they love that he went and played college. They're sending Jack Nesbitt to Michigan this year, another one of their draft picks from last year. Now he's going to be in the NCAA. And I think when you see guys that, Macklin Celebrini, there's so many different guys, but, I think a player like Cale Makar is maybe opens the door to a Macklin Celebrini coming, and a guy like Macklin Celebrini opens the door to others. And now, of course, with the rule change, it's just adding everyone coming down here. So I think that's part of it. The other one that's, I think we should credit Nate Ewell a little bit in College Hockey Inc. and Mike Snee, because those guys have moved on now, but they were there at the time when things were tough for college hockey. It was
an uphill battle.
They were losing a lot of guys from the NTDP even, and American guys were leaving when they kind of created this, and they got the story out to players. And I think that they deserve a lot of credit for the work they did to help prospects understand what college hockey is, and that, guys can make it. So those are a couple things that reasons why I think we've seen this trend. But I do think that the start of College Hockey Inc., if you look at it, there's a direct correlation as the years it went on that more and more players ended up in college. And I do think part of it was just the education piece and people who are unfamiliar with it. I just talked to Liam and Marcus Ruck yesterday, two players who could go in the first or second round this year. They didn't know college hockey at all growing up. Mm-hmm. So it takes something for guys to learn sometimes what it is and what it's all about. And it was Keaton Verhoff for them. When he committed, they said, wait a sec, what is this college? What is North Dakota? Why? And then, you learn more about it, and now all of a sudden they end up here. And Every player is a little bit different, but yeah, I think getting out college's story and just the success that guys have had is why we've seen that trend.
You cited Cale Makar as the tipping point, narrative-wise, but I think the opposite of that may have been Patrick Kane. When Patrick Kane left the United States, I think that was an eye-opening moment for folks in college hockey to say, we need to do something about this. We can't be losing, especially an American player of that profile. We need to find a way to keep those players in America playing college hockey. So I think those are two examples on either side of the spectrum. And it's interesting. You and I chat about this a lot. Leading up to the CHL eligibility rule change, and in the immediate aftermath, there were folks in the game concerned that, well, now this means we won't get the Cale Makars anymore, which always struck us as odd. You and I personally speaking, not as a College Hockey Inc. organization, that, well, you're getting those players now. Now there's fewer roadblocks in their path to college hockey. And we've seen that play out in recent years.
Yeah, I think, guys like I mentioned, like Mike Snee and Nate Ewell were guys who were, going through this battle trying to keep guys college eligible. Their whole thing was getting a guy to want to come to college is not the hard part. It's keeping them eligible leading up to it. These kids,
selling them on the road they would have to take.
Exactly. Yeah. And no, they don't. The thing that, surprised me, let's face it, the majority of college hockey coaches did not want CHL players eligible. It was the CCHA that led that drumbeat. It was Grant Patalny at Northern Michigan and Tom Serratori at Bemidji State. And those were the guys that really saw this for what was going to happen. I think sometimes when coaches had a tough time seeing something they've never seen before, they didn't expect guys to leave the CHL because they've never seen guys leave. But it wasn't because guys wouldn't leave to come to college. It's because they couldn't. Like the rule wasn't there. And I just was kind of surprised at the lack of confidence they had in the college game. I'm like, look at the infrastructures that have been built up, the experience, that's my other thing I think everybody overlooks. I always thought the first group is going to come for hockey reasons. They're going to come because you get bigger, stronger, the weight rooms, the facilities, everything. The second wave is going to come because of that and because they're going to hear how much fun college was from their buddies. I think we totally overlook that aspect. Like there is something to like having that experience, that life experience that's just completely different. And I think too many people look at college hockey as just a hockey league. It's not just a hockey league. Like it's an experience that can't be replicated. You're around thousands of your peers. And, I think everyone who went through it understands just how fun college is. And I'm not even talking about hockey players. I'm just talking about people who went to school and college and know what it's all about to be around all your peers all the time and living on your own. So, there are a lot of reasons, but it is becoming it is going to be an exciting NHL draft.
Joe Murphy, Rick DiPietro, Eric Johnson, Owen Power, Macklin Celebrini. Those are the players who have been drafted first overall that played college hockey. Will Gavin McKenna join that group? We will find out Friday night. Schloss, before I let you go, anything you want to plug leading up to the draft as far as coverage?
Yeah, so I'd say you're on social media. Check out College Hockey Inc.'s graphics as soon as Jayson can get them posted. Have some grace if he puts a wrong logo somewhere. He is going to be absolutely swamped. Number 2, at the Grand Forks Herald, we have a new blog system, live blog system. I'm going to be testing it out this weekend. So if it goes awry, apologies, but I do plan on covering the draft from there and really covering it from a college hockey perspective. and all the college picks. I'll add in a little some commentary if I can. If I can get some comments from some coaches, I'll do that. So if you're a college hockey fan, come over to GrandForksHerald.com. I'll have that live blog going on Friday night for the first round. I'll do my best to keep up. Might not be easy, but I'll try to let you all know what's going on from an NCAA perspective. Lots of different players and teams are going to get drafted. There will be a lot of news coming out of it. So check that out. If you're just watching at home, pull it up.
That's awesome. So first time using this platform?
First time using the platform.
Right.
It could go horribly awry. It might work. We're going to try it out though. And just it's because it's the first time we're trying it out. We're going to be covering all college hockey players from all colleges. I'm going to try to see if I can pull down the paywall for it. So if you're not a Grand Forks Herald subscriber, it's all right. Come join. Check it out. Maybe I'll hopefully drop some interesting nuggets of the players getting picked.
Bombs. Yes. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm going to pull Sean Hogan in here shortly, but thanks again for making the time for us. It's a busy week, and I'll try and check out that blog while I'm sweating profusely at my laptop. Wing sauce all over my dress clothes.
Enjoy it.
All right, dude. Thanks. All right, joined now for the first time ever on College Hockey Today, the Executive Director of College Hockey, Inc., Sean Hogan, who has not had a busy offseason, who has not had a busy 2 years. 2 years now as Executive Director?
2 years as Executive Director, 6 or 7 years total College Hockey.
It's all blending, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a crazy couple of years. It's been a crazy offseason. Big news dropped on Tuesday. We're recording on a Wednesday that the NCAA Division I cabinet has voted to approve the age-based eligibility model. Important to note that this decision isn't final until the cabinet meeting concludes Wednesday, which could be any time now. We are recording on Wednesday. But we feel safe enough to go forward where we can answer people's questions and hopefully educate folks on what this means specifically for college hockey. So there are a lot of ways we can go with this, Sean. I guess maybe just give us the history of this whole process and a little bit of backstory of how we got to this point in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. It has been, I guess, chaos in the college sports landscape. Like you said, I've been executive director for 2 years, and about a month after I was named executive director, we had CHL eligibility. Last summer, we were dealing with the House settlement. Now this summer, we're dealing with the age-based eligibility model. And really what this stems from is litigation against the NCAA. And it goes back to there's a player named Diego Pavia, a quarterback at Vanderbilt, who sued for a 6th year of eligibility. Then he wanted a 7th year of eligibility. And other players were bringing litigation forward like that. Because in other sports, athletes play JUCO college or they play NAIA sports. And they were suing not to have those years count against NCAA athletics. So the NCAA, as a body, wanted to unify and standardize the NCAA eligibility window for all sports. So it's important to understand this is Division I sports only. And they wanted to, like I said, standardize a window of eligibility. And it started with when the first proposal came out, it was very detrimental to the hockey development model. It was based on when a player graduated high school, and essentially a player is the eligibility window would start the fall semester after they graduated high school. That would obviously be very difficult on the men's hockey development model because we have the system of junior hockey in place where players play at 19 and 20 years old on their road to NCAA Division I. So a ton of credit goes to the men's hockey commissioners, or all the commissioners, but in particular Steve Metcalf and Doug Christensen, who worked extremely hard to make sure people who made these decisions, the Division I Council, understood the impact it would have on hockey. So to their credit, they came up with a model based on 19 years old, and were able to present that to the Division I Council, and they adopted that model. So it wasn't a complete 100% win for hockey, but it was about as best as it could go, and a lot of credit goes to the Division I commissioners.
was a bit of a roller coaster too, because I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say there wasn't a ton of hope that the folks involved could get this changed. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, correct. I know that you and I worked hard about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, putting together infographics that would kind of put into a format where people could see it as a picture of what this would do to the hockey development model. But yeah, we didn't have a ton of hope that it would pass, but credit to everybody who was involved to really push this forward and bring it to the forefront.
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify that this is we're not positioning this as a College Hockey Inc. endeavor. We are a 4-person full-time staff. We work with a lot of people. You mentioned the commissioners. We work closely with the coaching body, and we have some external, I guess, constituents, for the lack of a better word, or partners, collaborators, the NHL, junior leagues, junior partners, et cetera. There were a lot of people that were really working hard to push this forward.
Yeah, it was the entire hockey development pyramid from the NHL on down. So the NHL, the USHL, USA Hockey, Hockey Canada, the CHL, men's college hockey, women's college hockey, College Hockey Inc. Everybody kind of rode in the same direction, and it was, I don't want to call it a miracle, but maybe a minor miracle.
It felt like it.
Yeah, it did. We were able to get something that was wasn't too much of a detriment to our development model.
So that was the how. Let's talk about the what, and most importantly, how this affects college hockey and players aspiring to play college hockey. Now that this model has essentially been approved, what are some of you're on the phone every day. I know you are. You're on the phone every day, almost all day, answering questions, whether that's recruits, people that help make their decisions. What are some of the most frequently asked questions you have been getting that have now been answered by this model?
Well, really, what the most important piece, and the question that we got the most beforehand, was the players that were currently in the system, right? They were operating under the assumption that they could play until they're 21 years old and try to earn an NCAA Division I opportunity. So we were getting tons of questions about players that were currently in the development model. And it does lay out pretty specifically what happens. If you're a player that's going to enroll here fall of 2026, you'll have the benefit of either or model, they call it. So either the new age-based eligibility model, which is based on a 5-year window, and when you turn 19, or the old model, which was 5 years to play for, whatever is more beneficial to the athlete. But if you're going to enroll further down the road, fall of 27 or later, the age-based model will be applied to all of those potential student athletes. So that's the biggest question that was answered. What happens to players that are currently in the development path? And they outlined that for us.
And what was known as the 21-year-old rule, that no longer exists. That's been replaced entirely, correct?
Correct. Yep. The age-based model will now replace the old 21-year-old rule. I won't get too in the weeds on that because going forward is not as important. And as you know, in November and December, a big part of what Chris Marini, our Director of Athlete Relations, was working on during that time was answering questions about the 21-year-old rule. But now we no longer have to do that. We're answering questions on the age-based model. So it's just one question replaced with another question.
So more questions. Not everything has been answered yet. This stuff obviously hasn't been implemented yet. More questions will remain. What are some of the questions you're still getting that we simply don't know the answer to yet?
Well, we don't know the answer to when the 19th year birthday will cut off. So we're hearing different dates in August and September. So basically what we'll need to know for implementation is that the rule states that when a player turns 19 years old, they need to enroll full-time in the next fall term, and then their eligibility window will open. What about a player born in August or September? Do they need to enroll in that fall, or can they go the following fall? That we don't know. We expect to have more answers here in mid-July when they put out the implementation guidance.
I won't rattle off your cell number on this pod, but if folks have questions, very specific questions for you or Chris, best way to get a hold of you.
Yeah, just go to collegehockeyinc.com. Our emails are listed there, and we're happy to answer any questions anybody has about this or anything related to the college hockey.
All right, Sean, I appreciate you hopping on today. I know it's been an insane week, and we're traveling tomorrow, so I appreciate you doing this, and I will see you in Buffalo.
Appreciate you having me on. A lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. As always, reminder, hop on the socials and keep an eye on College Hockey Inc.'s live coverage of the draft all weekend long, and do visit Schloss's new attempt at a live blog during the draft. That should be a fountain of knowledge as well. Enjoy the coverage, enjoy the hockey.